Hi, welcome to the Human Design stream in the Coherence Lab channel. I'm here with my good friend Armi, and she's agreed to help me kick off the Human Design and You series, where I'll be talking to folks who are just playing around with their human design, either in full or in just bits and pieces of it. And so, Armi is a 5-1 sacral generator with a split definition. She is an amazing public relations and branding strategist, and while she's been helping me with my little human design business, I've been teaching her a bit about her human design and some of the folks in her life. And so I just thought it might be fun to just talk to her about what the human design thing has been like for her. So I'll just hand it over to her.
Well, let me start by saying initially I had no clue what human design was about,
Mhm.
but apparently it was in my sphere because I kept seeing things on Instagram. And I was taking an art class, and Christine happened to be there, and she said the magic word human design, and my radar started going up, and I was like, wait, what? You know, human design? I don't think I've ever met anybody in real life who has knowledge of that. And she's also a practitioner. So I
Yeah.
said, oh, please,
Well, I
please
felt
tell
the
me.
same way too, right? Because here we are in this little Texas town. I'm like, what? You've heard of human design?
And yeah, next thing you know, we just started working together and having weekly Zoom calls, and she's been helping me ever since. Um, what I'm recognizing is that I have had a lot of programming
Mhm.
in my life, and having that um, awareness has allowed me to change and pause in my decision making
Mhm.
in guiding me to what feels right
Yeah.
and the appropriate direction that my life should go. And ever since I've met you, I can definitely say that my life was, I would say, a roller coaster, but I think that was also part of the process because I was recognizing, the changes and my own self-awareness, uh, and those changes were in turn reflecting what was happening, in my present and future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you spoke really beautifully to the thing that I think is so nice about human design, is so great about it, is that you actually have a map, right? You have something to look at that's tangible that can guide you to be like, oh yeah, either what is this thing? You can be curious, or oh, I remember we talked about this thing and be reminded about it. So I think that having the visuals, and you and I are both really visual people, right? So that is really helpful. But I'm curious if has there been like something that's been either like the most intriguing aspect, either about human design in general or about your design that you've been really like,
Well, I think just putting it into context in a way to understand it,
hmm
uh, not just with the chart,
hmm
uh, but also I think a word we were uh, talking about was constellation.
yeah,
So when you're talking about map, so it's kind of placing you in space and time.
hmm
And I don't think we ever step back and really, with the chaos of everything that's going on in our lives, we don't really step back and go, where am I at this point in my life?
yeah,
And it kind of, then you have a placement and then you can decide, your direction.
yeah,
So I think human design helped me with, in branding, we call that positioning. And so I really like that terminology of constellation, where I am placed in the world currently at that snapshot in time, and where it is that I want to go. And using my human design and what I've learned about my um, personality, my tendencies, and has allowed me to navigate through that system in a way that's more authentic to myself.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do you feel like is there one thing in particular about the about what you've learned about your design that has helped, really keep you in that kind of authentic space?
Well, one of the things that I thought, at least in when I was learning about human design, I thought I was a manifesting generator.
Hmm.
And but although I did have a question mark about it because there were some things where I felt like, the other manifesting generators that I see were I was like them, but not quite.
Yeah,
And so you clarified that for me that I'm a pure generator.
right.
So that I think helped because I think I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And so that it helped to clarify that. And also in as a generator in as in my decision making process, it is about um feeling the energy that's calling to me and saying yes or no to whatever presents itself and
Mhm.
whatever lights me up.
Right.
And that has been more apparent to me in every day, in the smaller, from small things to food, what are we making for dinner, to something, like a big decision like, oh, let's go on a trip. Where
Right.
should we go? Oh, well, that sounds like an interesting place to go, or it's a definite no. I don't feel the energy moving in that direction. So
Mhm.
that I would say has been really significant, using that I would call it as my compass,
Mhm.
or like a kind of like a divining rod, I suppose,
Yeah.
to uh move me into the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for you in particular, and for a lot of folks on the planet, but you in particular, this embodied wisdom, like paying attention to this embodied wisdom, is a real leap for you because you have a defined head and ajna in your design, right? And so your brain is going all the time, right? And we live in a world that's conditioned us to make decisions from our brain, right? To be rational and logical and all those things. So you had this double, like the ability to be rational and logical all the time, and the world telling you that's where you should make decisions from, right? So it's really impressive that you're like, wait, wait, wait. Actually.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a little bit more in sync, I guess, versus
Mhm.
having my brain and my heart divided,
Yeah.
and it is so true. Like even prior to human design, now that I can, look back, anything where decision making was coming from a sense of feeling
Yeah.
and like gut,
Hmm.
I was very confident in those decisions. I was very happy with how things turned out, even if they didn't turn out the way I wanted them to, but it was kind of coming from a acceptance,
Hmm.
you know? So that has helped. And also, um, I, it also gave me an explanation to how my mind was constantly thinking all the time and why it won't shut up, for example. In the middle of the night, I'm trying to sleep and I'm thinking of all,
Yeah.
ideas, and they're just going from one thing to another, just streams of consciousness that just on and on. And so I've recognized to um I think one of the things that you told me, Christine, is like um to as a generator, I am to go, go, go all day long until I tucker myself out, so to speak. And I've been trying to practice that, and it's actually working for me. And I actually sleep better at night because I'm tuckered out, because I'm using my energy where it's supposed to in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. It is very true. And there's so many generators on the planet, and so many people have, lives and jobs that keep them sitting. It's really hard to get through all of that energy that is, being created in our system. So I'm glad you're having that experience of like, oh, it actually does make a difference if I keep going, right? Like if I work through and then become tired and then allow myself to rest, right? Because it can be
I
tricky
do I
otherwise.
do listen to my body. So it's not like I'm going all day long, but throughout the day when I'm listening to my body, and
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
very conscious of when it's time to take that break. Although sometimes I will push, and I can tell I'm pushing, and
Hmm.
then there's that, the forces within me trying to
Hmm.
argue and go, okay, you need to, my body telling me to rest
Hmm.
and recharge and take a break. So
Right. No, that's absolutely true. Generators need to rest just like everybody else. So you're right. I'm glad that you made that distinction, right? Like it's not like you race all day. It's just that you're busy doing things, but then when you need a break for a few minutes, you take a break, right? Like that's an excellent um so that's exactly how you're supposed to be doing it. And I think too, like you're really talking from this really embodied space, which is really nice because I think sometimes the in some places human design can be a place where people get more in their head, right? They start to think more about like what I should be doing and what does my design tell me I should, like all of that. And that's what I love about you is you're not doing that, right? You're like, I know these things and I'm gonna, pay attention to what my body is telling me, how I feel in the moment, right? And I'm not gonna get too caught up in all the details, right? Which is really easy to do in a system this complex.
Well, and I think the recognition of my own programming versus what it used to be, and recognizing that has helped, because what you just talked about is sometimes what I used to be,
Yeah.
a lot in my head and less action.
Yeah.
And that's when I found that I, would get burnt out and
Yeah.
overworked,
Yep.
and using my energy in the incorrect way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I tend to work with mostly women but I do think that human design can be specifically helpful to women for exactly that reason, right? Because I mean, there's so much conditioning for all humans. It's not just women. But women have a special kind of conditioning that can be really hard to not, you just don't see it, right? It's just so ingrained in who we are. And so when you bring in this lens, and you start to say to people, hey, it's not, this isn't actually something that's good for you. This isn't actually aligned for your energy. It just gives them another way to be like, oh, wait, what? But I've done it this way my whole life.
And I think that's the hardest challenge, once you learn this, it's the daily practice of doing either the opposite or doing something else that you're used to, and moving that muscle
Yeah,
until it's strengthened,
yep,
and then it becomes just a habit.
exactly.
And unlearning all those things that we've been programmed, to do.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And again, like we call in human design, we call it an experiment, right? Like there is no perfect, right? There's going to be definitely days where you're in your head and you're doing stuff that you would have done 10 years ago and you're still doing them and that's just the way it is, right? And it's just like, okay, cool. I'll try not to do that tomorrow. But no guarantees,
Exactly. There's
So, I
good
don't
days
know.
and bad days with anything,
Right,
if you're off,
exactly. And
you didn't
yeah,
have a
but
good
there's no
night's sleep,
judgment.
or
Right, exactly.
the
Um,
weather, for example, like today it's really cold, and so that certainly could affect you
yeah.
know you all in all kinds of ways. So
Yeah, no, I love
sure,
that.
just
So it sounds like your relationship to yourself has shifted a bit in learning a little bit about your design. Would you say that's true?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think since I've met you, I think since last summer
Mm-hmm.
we were doing those sessions, I definitely have recognized things that I tolerated before
Mm-hmm.
that I no longer do, and putting my foot down and setting boundaries,
Yeah.
with things that I could, and really holding on to the values and
Mm-hmm.
and and things that I used to let slide,
Mm-hmm.
that I no longer do, but feeling really quite firm about it, and not feeling bad. You know how
Yeah.
sometimes you set those boundaries and you're like, oh, I feel bad, or I feel guilty, or but I feel really firm in it because it feels authentically right in doing so for myself, and
Yeah.
for not just for self-care, but for I don't know the right words, but just um sticking up for myself, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's embodied, right? Like this is what we're talking about. You have this
That
real
is the perfect word.
embodied
Yes,
sense of like, this is who I am. These are my boundaries. You get to do you, but you don't get to do it inside my boundaries. Right?
exactly.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
so
what I
you
meant when I was referring to the roller coaster, because once you go through the practice, there will be significant shifts that will
Yeah.
happen in your life,
Yeah.
including people who are part of it or no longer part of it.
Yeah.
So it can be quite striking.
Yeah.
But I think it, you know, through that journey, ultimately what's important is that you really understand yourself better and what you stand for. Um, and so I think, and moving forward, then life becomes um uh a greater experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's true, what you're saying is a good example of how when our relationship shifts with ourselves, other relationships shift, right? And so when we're in a position of having problems with somebody else or strife or struggles, you know, it's a classic thing. We can only change ourselves, right? And this is something I think human design offers people in a very simple way. It's like, all right, you're struggling out here, cool. Just look in here for a little bit. See what you can dig up over here, right?
Well, and I think that authenticity too, also garners or, attracts the right people and circumstances in your life. And so, um, from my experience, the shifts that have happened, although some of them were difficult, like ending relationships, um, have also opened up new new friendships,
Mhm.
that I didn't have room for
Right,
before, where I was focusing my energy in anything. It could be relationship, it could be work, or the other things that you're passionate about that you think that you ought to spend so much energy on that, and then human design is kind of is really a mirror and going, oh, in recognizing where you're focusing your energy, how much of it you're focusing, and then you wonder to yourself, well, is that worth it, and am I getting, like in business, my return on investment?
right.
And then you go, you know what, I'm not, and so I'm shifting it. And when you do that, and you set boundaries, there's going to be people that are going to be dropping off because they don't like the change in you, but the change in you is your authentic self, you
Exactly.
know
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that that's the other thing human design is really good at is confirming for people things that they pretty much already knew, but they weren't either certain of or they didn't feel it was okay to think that about themselves. Lots of times people be like, "Oh yeah, I totally feel like that, but I didn't know why, or I
Yeah,
didn't know
it's
that was
almost
me."
like it's like you were waiting for permission, but then when you understand who you are,
Mhm.
it's like, well, I don't need permission, you know?
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. That's so awesome. Cool. I think that covered a lot of ground. Any other things about human design that, have
Well,
been
I'm still in the early stages, so I'm still learning
sure.
more and more. I could honestly say there's that portion that is about astrology that is just very foreign to me, and I'm
Mhm.
still, when I listen to it, it's not clear or
Right.
understandable. But there's so many aspects and layers of it that I'm still trying to, understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true.
And I'm looking forward to learning, so it's just a process, and I'm just, doing my practice daily and then learning something new. And when I learn that new thing, I apply it.
yeah. Yeah, like how they say like tennis is a lifetime sport. I think human design
Yes.
is a lifetime system. Like you just are never
Yes.
going to know all of it. You're just always going to be learning. So, I mean, I certainly am still learning. But that's also what I love about it, right? Because it's just, it's there when you need it. It's interesting when you want it to be. And if you don't, if you're interested in something else, it can just sit in the background, right? But you've always got this awareness at the energetic level of like what you said earlier, like who I am here to be, and what I'm here to do, right? It's a real helpful piece of, I don't know, just a little bit of certainty in some ways in this uncertain world.
That's the word right there,
Yeah.
is the certainty.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then and with certainty, gives you confidence to move forward.
Right. Exactly. I love that. Well, that's awesome. I'm gonna put some information about you in our show notes, so I'll get with you on that. And so if people are interested in working with you, which I think they should be because you do amazing work, I think that would
Thank
be
you.
awesome. And yeah, so we'll wrap it up. And I really want to thank you for being my first person on this little stream. I really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks. Thank you.